Welcome, my friend. You're going to love this week's podcast. This week, I am speaking with my friend Janice, and we are talking about not only how we met, but also intuition and how we all have it. We don't all believe it, but we all have it. And she helps people tap into that so that they know inside themselves what's right for them. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. Remember to share this with your friends and subscribe. That would be amazing. I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. Hello, my friend. Welcome. This is Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast. And my friend Janice and I are welcoming you to our conversation because we realized that we had started talking and we did what we always do. We started our conversation and we were going all over the place. And I said, oh my gosh, we haven't started the podcast yet. So, Janice,
Hi.
Come on down. Welcome. Let's welcome our new friends listening to the podcast into our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, it's so funny that we were chatting away and I said, oh my goodness, we're not even recording yet and our conversation has already started. So, but it's a beautiful thing because we just connect and have these great conversations. And I feel like every time we get together, it's just like we dive right into the good, juicy stuff, right? And I met you through a networking group, and I used to take yoga snack lunchtime with you.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been for a little while. But because I know you didn't start there. So I like to know people's journeys. I know a little bit of your journey. I like people to know the journey of like where you were and what drew you into, well, you went from yoga into high performance coach and intuition and all of this. And it's such a cool story.
Okay. I love this. And you're right. We dive in because you and I are just like, let's bare our souls every time we get together. And I just hold you in such reverence for that because it's not everyone we can do that with.
Thank you. You're awesome too, by the way.
Yeah. So my story and where I started, I was the empathic kid. I was like the black sheep of the family. I was too sensitive. I needed to toughen up. And like, I just knew things. I didn't know really at the time what that was. I just always had this sixth sense about me. And it didn't fit. Like I was raised Catholic. So that did not jive. Like you're the little beard kid.
We need to exercise you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I never fit in school. I was always different. I just saw things from a different perspective. But as I grew up and I got older, I just got on that kind of conveyor belt, like go to school, get a good job, have a good relationship, have a good career, have a good home, have a good life. And that never, like something was always missing. And, we're just conditioned for good. We're not conditioned for great.
Right. Or settling,
Yeah. Tone down the expectation. It's like, no, like that never made sense. And I became a respiratory therapist. And I started doing yoga, right? Because I was working these 12-hour shifts and this was just really getting me back to me, which is such a beautiful thing because that's what your podcast is all about, right? Coming home to ourselves. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I went and I did my yoga teacher training and I started teaching yoga. And what I realized was as I was teaching yoga, because my background is kinesiology and then respiratory therapy, so I'm very much about the body. And I was bringing people home to be comfortable in their body. And as I was doing that, my intuition was starting to grow. And I didn't really make sense of it at the time.
Right.
I was just like, I'm tuning in. I'm starting to know things. I'm just feeling things, not really knowing, but like, I just feel certain. I just feel like this is going to happen. I just know. And then I started to consciously work with it. And people were like, how are you doing what you're doing? You're traveling, you're getting paid to travel for work. Like, this is incredible. You've reduced your hours at your actual job. Life is taking off for you. Like, this is incredible. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I have to put words to this. I have to explain what I'm doing.
Right.
Because when I asked people about intuition, when I wanted to know more, they were like, meditate. And I was like, I am meditating. I'm not getting anywhere.
Right.
And, I Googled it, and Google was like, go for a walk in nature. I was like, I'm walking in the woods. Like, the woods know me. Why don't I know more about my intuition? And then just slowly, when people started asking, that was when I really pushed myself to like, I have to be able to explain this. I have to be able to explain that I know this because I got chills down my arms. I know this because my stomach just clenched. I know this because I can just feel my heart get excited about it. And the more I did that, the more people were like, so I'm not weird? Like, I experienced some of that. I just didn't know it meant anything. And then once
Right.
people knew, like, oh my gosh, this means something. And intuition is a whole language, and it's our connection to, whether you call it God or source or Allah or spirit or universe, whatever it is, your higher self. And people started to use it. What happened then is people were like, my mental health is so improved.
Right.
And I trust myself. And I'm not worried, and I have more energy. And I was like, yes, this is where the magic is. This is where the clarity, this is where the big moves, this is where the like daring to leap comes from. And so I was teaching that, and then it just slowly expanded into athletes, and it expanded into breathing. And the biggest challenge I had was, I have all these different identities. I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm a yoga instructor. I'm an intuition coach. I've worked with Paralympians and Olympians. Like, there's so many different facets that then it became for me a question of identity. Who am I? I love to be this person. I love luxury. It's wonderful to experience, but I also love sweatpants on the couch. Right? Like,
I'm wearing sweatpants right now.
Yeah. Right. And so it was like, because everybody says, who are you going to become? Who are you? Define yourself. And I'm like, I'm going to throw down, and I'm going to say, I'm not defining myself as one thing. I'm going to give myself permission to have all these different homes, and to listen to myself, and to trust myself, and to follow myself. And so, yeah, now it's yoga, it's breathing, it's high performance for people, whether you're in corporations, a CEO, an entrepreneur, or you are an athlete. Like, I teach yoga for athletes, and I work in, flow state and peak performance. And that, I think, is where greatness comes in. When we trust ourselves, that's when we really get that great, life, that great career, that great experience. Right. So that's kind of my arc so far.
But it's true. Like, it's like you have to find your way. I had this conversation earlier with someone. You aren't always, some people seem like they are, but you aren't always born just, yep, this is me, this is what I'm going to do. Sometimes it's, you try this. And even though they seem like they're separate yous, they're not really, because they kind of all work together, right? They integrate and merge, and one draws on the other. And I kind of use myself as an example. Like, people will say to me, an accountant, like that, what, you were an accountant? I said, but that logical part of my brain is super useful for some of the things that I do as an entrepreneur. And that logical part of my brain takes care of that. So the rest of the things I do can play and fun and dance and sing and help people, but also I can draw on that when that person that I'm helping needs it. So it's just like an integration. I drew a card the other day, or maybe it was the record keepers. I can't remember if it was the record keepers or a tarot card that said that, or maybe it was my horoscope that said, I could draw from many sources that said all of my parts were going to be weaving together. And so I don't think there's ever a need to limit yourself. Like, gosh, why do that? Why pick?
That is such a profound thing, I think, for a lot of people, because we really have had that conditioning of like, be one thing and be something good because it's safe.
Right? You can be happy or rich. You
Yeah.
can be thin or happy. You can
Yeah.
be this or this. So we live in that duality space instead of and. Yes, and.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and. Yes,
And
and.
yes. And that's, I mean, I did improv. Yes. And is a huge, huge thing.
Is it?
Yes.
I'm not doing improv. But
Oh. But it's, if you ever watch improv, this is such a good segue, and I love that this has come up. If you ever watch improv, like Whose Line Is It Anyway, or any improv sketch show, it works because people just say yes. They get an offer you receive, and you say yes, and I'm going to add to this. I'm going to collaborate with this. I'm going to enhance this. And then this wonderful scene unfolds, and everybody's laughing and having a good time. So,
and imagine if you lived your life that way.
yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
That's very cool, because the no and this or shuts down all the doors to all other opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
this, nothing else. And the universe isn't ever going to limit you to the awesomeness that you could have in your life.
No. And I think it comes down to letting go of how we think our dream is going to show up and how it's going to be, right? Because we think, oh my God, like I want to be a millionaire. Of course you want to be a millionaire. Who doesn't? Right? But then you get hit with this bill and you're like, no, that's not what I ordered. Take it back. Take it back. I don't want that. But if you end up with a big bill, well, what are your bills going to be like as a millionaire?
Right?
Right? If you can't handle like a $5,000 tax bill right now, how are you going to handle a tax bill as a millionaire? So it's not that it's a no, it's just, this is what you're going to, it's like prepping you, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to say yes. Okay, I can handle
Thanks.
that.
And I would like the money to pay for it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And the resources to go with this. And,
Right.
you know, really anchoring that version and that identity into yourself of yes, and I think we all, at least from my experience, we're this beautiful tapestry of all of the different experiences. You have accounting, you have massage therapy, you have life experience, you have yoga, right? And you're pulling all that together in this beautiful, rich tapestry that allows you to help people with transformations. And it's so wonderful. It's so beautiful, right? And then I have my own tapestry, and so does everybody. And I think when we say yes to all the parts of ourselves, that's where we find that flow. Yes, right. I'm going to figure this out. Yes, I'm going to do it. Because the moment we introduce resistance, and I love going deep into energetics of just like, is it squeaky clean energy? Is it a yes? Even if it's not what you want, I'm going to nail this because I know it gets better. I'm going to absolutely crush this because it's not the stage I want to be on yet, but it's a step there. So I'm just going to say yes. So yes is a powerful word.
So amazing. And yes, and ooh, yay. I'm practicing. So what do you find, because you've been working with all these people, what do you find is is there a trigger that helps them find that way to trust themselves? Or do you think there's a common thing where people's that trips people up, like a fear or a disbelief, or is there a commonality that you have noticed? Because if we do trust ourselves, like, imagine where you could go. Maybe we don't trust that would take us anywhere. I don't know.
Right? I mean, step one is trust that everything is happening for you. That's like a big blanket umbrella kind of trust. But I think the thing that trips people up is that it's simple.
Right.
And we're expecting it to be complicated. And then we try and logic our way into it, where it's like, if you trust, this is the impulse, I'm going to play it out. And what I encourage people to do is I'm like, start small. Like you and I, The people missed a really good conversation. Thank
Yeah,
you,
they did.
because you were telling me about every morning you're asking yourself, what tea do I need? What tea does my body need? Right? And you're getting an intuitive impulse. And we talked about how you receive. And it's not a one size fits all. You receive in different ways than I receive, which is different than there's overlap.
Yeah.
But when you start to know your own intuitive language, and it is really truly a language, and I always tell people, I'm like, start small. Start by asking, what kind of tea do I need? What food do I need right now? And just trust it and take that step. Like, start small. Don't be like, should I launch a business and invest all of my savings?
Yeah.
Don't start there.
No, don't start there, because
Yeah.
you're not going to trust it even if it's right.
Exactly, right? So when you start to go, okay, this is what you're calling me to, this is what you're nudging me to or guiding me to, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see how it feels. I'm going to see what happens when I say yes. And when you experience a good outcome, and you will, whether that's, wow, I feel really good. Wow, this magical thing happened. Wow, I could not have scripted that moment. And there's so many moments I could share of like myself or clients who were like, you are not going to believe this. It's my favorite text message to get is, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, oh, it's juicy. Tell me everything.
Yeah. Okay, let me get a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hold on. Gotta make a cup of tea. Gotta get in my nice comfy position and then go. And yeah, when you start small and you start to test it for yourself and you start to really fine tune your own language, your own intuition, and start to realize it's a two-way street, and you can ask questions and you can ask for confirmation. And that doesn't make you bad or wrong or anything like that. Like, you're a human. When you learn that you can work with it,
right,
that's when you start to thrive. That's when it becomes easy. And I have had more than one client say, it's weird that it's so easy. I'm like,
yeah.
this is how it's meant to be.
And I started with, like, at first I thought, I can't hear mine. Like, I can't hear my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's there because it'll come out at the strangest times when I'm not, when I don't recognize it. Like, I can remember one day I was on my way to a course. And so I was headed to the subway to go downtown. And I looked over at a building and I said, oh, the courses are often in there. I'm just going to go and look. And it saved me a trip downtown and back, because that's where the course was. Even though I was fully intentionally going downtown, I'm like, I'm just going to go and look. And the instructor of the course said, you should thank your intuition for that. I'm like, you're right, I should.
Mm-hmm.
But so it would just come in little flashes. So it wasn't until I started practicing, but starting with little things like a cup of tea. Like, do I want this kind of tea? Do I want this kind of tea? And without a lot of consequences, because then it's like you have to exercise that trust muscle. Like, I'm demonstrating to my intuition that I trust it by following what it says.
Yeah.
It's demonstrating that it's for my highest and best good, because I don't feel like crap after I drink my cup of tea.
Right?
And I feel like, oh, that was the tea I needed today. Thank you very much. So, and it is, like you said, it's a two-way street, but it's like you have to practice it so it gets stronger, like a muscle.
And as a mentor of mine said, she was like, life is games. Like, there's the game of love, there's the game of relationships, the game of friendship, the game of work, the game of health. Win the easy game first.
Yeah.
And I will always remember that. Like, win the easy game first. Don't try and be like, I want $1 million today. How is this going to work? Win the game with tea. Win the game with, oh, I feel like I should go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. I feel like I should go into this bookstore. I'm going to go in the bookstore. I feel like I should listen to this podcast. I'm going to listen to this podcast. And see what kind of golden nuggets show up, because there is something.
Right.
And when you win the easy game first, you build the confidence to win the big games.
Yeah. And then as you like, I feel it like it's like running. Like, I used to run, so I wouldn't have run out and run a marathon. It's like, first I ran a 5K, then I ran an 8K, then I ran a 10K. So it's like, I'm not going to go from T to $1 million. I'm going to go from T to, should I phone this person?
But it is possible.
Yeah,
it's possible to do it.
But you need the trust and belief inside yourself, because even if my intuition says, yes, you can have, this is where you're going to get your $1 million. If I don't believe it, I could sabotage myself on the way.
Exactly.
Right?
And you will,
I
right?
don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Do you remember that book? Did you ever read the book, The Big Leap?
No.
Ooh, write that down onto your book list. The
I
Big
feel
Leap
like I should. Okay.
by Gay Hendricks.
Okay.
He's a psychologist or something, but he talks about people having an upper limit problem. So you have your set point of where you feel like you belong, and if you start doing better, you're like, oh, this is too much, and you sabotage yourself and bring yourself back down.
Yeah.
So it's like slowly you move your set point up.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was I was in a coaching program at one point, and the woman was like, I keep earning $5,000, but I want to earn 10. And he said, well, do you think you can earn 10? She said, well, she was a bit wobbly. He said, well, then set your goal at 6. Like,
Yeah.
one step at a time. Do you think you can earn 6? Yeah, I could earn 6. Okay, then go earn 6. And then, she was doing it with poker of all things.
Jeez.
It's like, you're only earning 5,000 on poker. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, but she had an upper limit of like, she didn't believe she could do it. So she kept losing the game of life.
Exactly. The funny thing is intuition is just energy. It's just
right?
Communication with like a higher source. And if your energy's not squeaky clean, you're going to feel it and you're going to know it. Because the moment you say, I want $10,000 and your heart sinks or you get that like negative, you're going to be like, there's resistance in my vibration. But you can ask your intuition, how do I clean out this?
I was going to ask you, how do I like squeak my cleans? How do I?
I'm going to lay this out. It's so simple.
Okay.
It's so simple. You recognize, okay, it's not squeaky clean. I've got some resistance going on. Ask your intuition, what is the resistance? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. It's going to say, and like your intuition is that honest best friend, guys. Like it is, hey, Janice, you're playing small right now. Okay, cool. What do I do about that? And then your intuition, your intuition is as good as the questions you're asking.
Right.
So if you know where you want to go and you can recognize there's resistance, okay, there's resistance. What's it about? What do I do to overcome it or to level myself up? What do I do to become that $10,000 person, that $1 million person? You're going to get answers from your intuition. And again, you've built that trust, you've established it. So go for it. Say yes. That's it.
That's all.
That's it. I know. I told you, most people think it's too easy. And I'm like, it's not.
It's like, there must be a couple more steps. Okay, then what?
And the thing is, your intuition loves you so much, it will continuously answer.
So your quality of your life is based on the quality of your questions that you ask.
100%.
And if people don't know how their intuition answers them, like right now, I'm in a yes-no relationship with my intuition. So if I asked questions, I would have to find right now either a new way to get answers or a new way to understand the answers. And maybe I'm asking this for me. Hopefully this helps somebody in the audience because I want to know for me, but I also want to know for you guys. So if my answers come as yeses and nos, and I say, what can I do about this? And I'm like, what's my answer? Or am I asking the wrong questions?
No. Well, yes and no. You're just, let's put some questions in between so that we get you to a place where you're like, oh my God. And I'll tell you how my intuition works. I developed it physically first. Through my yoga practice, I was like, wow, I'm so in my body. I'm so aware. And your intuition works definitely through the body, but it also works through your mind.
Oh.
One of those voices is not your ego. One of those voices, or multiple of those voices.
How did you know there's voices in my head?
Because I'm intuitive like that, Heather.
I just thought it was my multiple personality disorder.
But one of them is your intuition or multiple. So I hear 3 different voices in my head and I know they are my intuition. And they have a different vibration and a different sound to them. And so I know which is which. I also have one that's my ego. And I was like, ooh, you're trying to masquerade as my intuition, you sneaky little bugger. But
it's like one of those bad guys with the thing over his mouth when he's talking on the phone.
Yeah. You don't know who I am, but I want you to do this. Like, I don't think so, buddy. But what I would say is you're practicing feeling it, which is amazing. Your intuition can talk to you. So you're good with yes or no questions. Will I be able to hear you if you talk to me?
Oh, there's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
See, good questions. That's what I need.
So if you ask yourself that and you get a yes, awesome. Then hold on. If you get a no, and this is the thing, you just have to feel it out. If you get a no, okay, what do I have to do in order to be able to hear you? And it's going to work in different ways. Some people, like I hear voices, but I also see. So sometimes I'll get a, hey, Janice, you need to go online and post about this. Okay, cool. I'm going to go online. I'm going to post about this. And then magic happens. Other things are like just an image, like a podcast name will come to mind. I should check that out. And it feels so thin, like it's so light that you're like easy to ignore, but don't.
Right.
So for you might not hear it directly first, but you might get the idea of calling a friend and just having a conversation. You might get the idea of going for a walk and something's going to stand out on your walk. So it comes in different ways.
Right.
You just have to be able to recognize it. But when you can, and we can all get to this point, we can all get to the point where we just talk to our intuition like it's our best friend.
Well, it's the person who's going to be with you your whole live long life, right?
Yeah, all your lives.
Every moment of every day. That's very cool. And you train people to do this.
Yeah, I have an 8-week course where I just walk you through how to do this and how to recognize it and give you exercises to practice so you know.
You're a rock star, high
Thank
performance
you.
coach. This is way juicier than, although I did enjoy lunchtime yoga.
Yes.
Hanging out, stretching out in the lawn and
God.
right.
I am teaching online again. I will say.
You?
Once a month, yes.
Once a month?
Once a month. I know.
It's not enough. Well, it's enough for you. There's lots.
It's my way of giving back now, actually, because it's where I started to reconnect. It's where I started to come home to myself.
Right.
And get back to me. And I realized I hadn't been teaching. I know. I'm just so honored that this is coming full circle. Like, what a beautiful space. The yoga is where I came home to me. And right. I think at the end of the day or at the start of the day or throughout our lives, that's what we all want. We all want to come home to ourselves and be connected with people where we can be ourselves. We don't have to be somebody else. There's been too much of that for too long. And so I realized, like, I haven't been teaching yoga for a while, but that's where it started for me. So I do have a free monthly yoga class online. It's usually a like 30 to 60-minute class where you get to come home to you. So right. I am teaching online, I promise.
Yay. Well, yeah. It's funny. So this is what happens. This must be my intuition because things I have popcorns pop into my head. So something you just said about, being yourself. I have a friend who she sent me a card. I can't even remember what the card was for. And on the front it was, so I'm so glad I don't have to pretend to be a nice person when I'm with you. And on the inside it says, because that shit's exhausting.
I feel like I could have written that card.
I know, right?
Yes.
Like I totally got it. I'm like, okay, I understand this. And it's not that she's not a nice person, but depending on the situation she's in, she has to she feels she has to present herself in a certain way. And the other popcorn, what was it? Sometimes the popcorn pops too far out of my head, over to the horizon, to the next house. Yeah, yoga. Yoga. So it's interesting because I realized I've been teaching yoga for like 19 years. I know, don't tell anybody that I'm that old. But it changes over time. And I think that it's true. Like, I've taught people who are in their heads, like when I had my own studio, and they're in a plank and you say, bend your elbows, and they look at you like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And like, bend your elbow. And they're looking at their arm and they can't figure out what it just doesn't English no longer makes sense. So I say, lower yourself on your stomach. And then they're like, oh. So, but being able to be in your body, which is where you live right now,
Mm-hmm.
if you like that as a first place of connection, is so powerful because it's your body doesn't lie to you, right? Your what's your second brain called? And it starts with the E.
Oh,
Your gut has brain cells in it, or a brain of its own. I'm gonna get it wrong, but apparently, do you know who Greg Braden is?
yes.
Did you know he's coming in September to Toronto?
No, I didn't.
Come. You
Okay.
can sleep in my spare room because I'm
Okay.
going. I'm going. It's
Yes.
in September. Okay, you guys, seriously, we hang
Yes.
out a lot and we talk a lot. So they've discovered brain cells similar to the brain cells in your brain in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask, often I try to tune to my heart first, because he says your heart never lies. Your heart doesn't tell stories. So your brain tells stories to you about the answers it gives you. Your heart just tells you the truth. And maybe that's where your higher self in some way lives.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think
I
about
think
that?
so. Like our, what was the statistic? And I will get this wrong, but
That's
it's
okay.
like
I'm not going to fact
our,
check.
yeah, don't fact check this. It's something like the brain can compute like a million things like a second or something, or like 40,000 things per second. And like 40,000 pieces of information, and the body can do like a million or more. Like it's so much more perceptive, but we've been taught not to love our bodies.
Right? Oh
But
my gosh.
get disconnected, and not to go down the conspiracy angle, but like we've been
Do
taught
it.
not to disconnect. We've been taught not to feel our emotions, and that certain emotions are bad, but we need them. We need to feel safe, and we need to fully experience it, because that's where you get into the masculine and the feminine, and not in the terms of gender, but in terms of really holding that balance of sometimes we need to trust, and sometimes we need to nurture, and sometimes we need to just be, and other times we need the masculine of the doing and the, okay, I'm going to take action now. But if we're not okay feeling disappointment, we're not actually projecting to the universe our desires, right? And
Doesn't Abraham call that contrast?
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And I think about the poor kids. So this is totally off topic, but I think about the poor kids who, they play Timbit soccer or something and everybody wins. I'm like, that's not going to
Mm-hmm.
nurture people who know how to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not saying, your kid isn't amazing and you want to support them. But if you don't know how to fail,
Mm-hmm.
then you run through life scared that you will fail, or when you do fail, it's so traumatic that you need therapy.
Mm-hmm. And you can't hold that duality then, right? And so the example I am thinking of for that is I applied to speak at a conference last year, and I did my thing and I submitted it, and I was excited, and the day came, and kudos to them. They actually say, like, you will know on this day. I was like, thank you. I love that. I'm so
Right?
appreciative of that. And the day came and they said, sorry, we've declined. And it's so interesting because it's always those closest to us who want to protect us the most. So I
Yeah.
told my friends who knew, and I said, guys, I didn't get accepted to speak, and I'm a bit bummed. And they tried to cheer me up, which is so sweet in the intention, but energetically completely missed. Because when you say things like, oh, it wasn't the right time and it wasn't meant to be, you're placating, you're playing down your desire. You're like, oh, you know what? It wasn't that big of a deal. It was a big deal. I wanted
Was a
to be
big
on that stage. Right. And we do the same thing when it's like it doesn't work out with a relationship, or like online. Oh, it's so frustrating. It's like, maybe I'm just not meant to be in a relationship right now. Well, now what you're actually saying to the universe is, I don't actually want it.
Right.
I don't want it. If you can't hold the disappointment and your desire, because when we get into those so-called negative emotions, we let go of our desire, and then the universe is like, well, you don't want it. That's cool. That's
Right.
cool. So
instead of saying that one didn't work, okay, what's next? Where's the next one?
yeah, exactly. Right. Or we question our worth. I'm not worthy of this. And that's just all wasted energy when we can say, you know what? I can be disappointed about that. I'm sad it didn't work out because I wanted that. I want that relationship. I want that speaking engagement. And so for the whole weekend, because I found out on a Friday, the whole weekend, I was like, I wasn't kind of like simmering on it, but every now and then my mind would just go, yeah, I'm bummed about that. I'm bummed about that. I wanted that. I do want to be on that stage. And sure enough, Tuesday morning, I slept a little late. I got up. There was an email in my inbox that said, we would actually really love to have you speak.
Amazing.
And I was like, because I held my desire along with the disappointment.
Right.
I was absolute in my energy of, this is my desire. Right? But we can't manifest only being in the positive and only being in our minds. We have to bring it all into our body. And when you feel safe to do that, and you can practice it on a small stage and then grow
practice it at T, and then
practice at T, and then work your way to that stage where there's thousands of people listening to you, right? And the $1 million. That's when we live a fully whole, embodied, great life.
Right.
That's when we discover just how capable we are, and that we have that much capacity to go, this is going well, and this sucks, and this I'm not even sure what to do with, and I need a nap, but I can hold it all and not be overwhelmed.
Right.
I trust myself so much that all that lower level stuff is taken care of. Right? When I work with athletes, it's flow state of getting into the body. So it's yes, it's muscle memory, but it transcends it because it's so automatic. Your body is responding before your brain has time to process. It is a high level skill, and it's so magical when you start to tap in, because people go, oh my gosh.
So good. I always tease my my students, because when I'm teaching a flow class, I say, I'll be talking. I'm like, oh, apparently we're doing this, because my body does the class, and I just tell the class what my body's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like trusting that it's like, oh, this is the next move. Okay, over here. And because I notice if I stop to think about what the next move is, the class isn't as good.
Yeah.
You know, it's the flow state can appear anywhere. It can appear in speaking and in physical things, in writing and painting and living,
and it can, if we allow it, show up in business.
Trust.
It can show up in our relationships, right? I had a client, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but
no names.
No names. She was having a discussion, an argument with her hubby. And she was like, Janice, you won't believe it. Again, I love these messages. You won't believe it. We were having an argument. My intuition, and she knows her intuition. I'm so proud of her, all the work she's done, which she just really keeps showing up for. It's not that it's hard work. She just continued to show up for it, and it just unfolded so beautifully for her. And she's like, we're having an argument, and my intuition said, tell him you love him. And she was like, that is not what I was feeling in that moment. She was like, anything but that. But she knew that was her intuition, and she knew to trust it. And so she said, okay. She goes, I want to tell you I love you. And she goes, that was the moment he broke down. That was the moment that our argument changed to you versus you, or him versus me, or us versus each other, to this is where I feel I'm failing. This is where the vulnerability came out. And she goes, it completely transformed.
Right.
We actually made progress. We actually got to the root of these issues. We showed up for each other today on a new level in our relationship.
See, I've got like For people who are listening, it just means I have chills down my back, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, I have chills too. So
Right.
it's fabulous.
Oh, I remember the other piece of popcorn that flew out the window.
There you go. It always comes back.
Because you were talking about the name of the podcast. It actually came to me when I was lying in the hospital. I don't know if I ever told you that.
No, I want to know.
When I had my stroke in 2021, because up to then I had been doing a business podcast called Build a Better Business. And I was lying in the hospital in the ER for 3 days because there was no beds in the stroke unit during COVID, during Halloween. And I was just lying there going, wow, what am I supposed to do with this 3-day silent retreat that you've given me? And I went, oh, a podcast called back to me. Okay, sure, no problem. Like,
Yeah.
So that's when it started. Like, it started there. My 8-week program of like helping people balance out the aspects of it. Like, you and I approach it differently. You go intuition, I go like all the holistic bits of the body, which is, I mean, everybody needs everything, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got to start bringing people in for each section, all my little experts that I have. But it was just like, okay, here's the program. Here, because I had double vision. I couldn't look at my phone. Yeah. So I was completely like, no visitors, no phone. Can you imagine? Some people would lose their minds. Like Instagram's down for half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, I'm like, don't let anyone in. Don't let anyone in.
So yeah, that's where the podcast came from.
That's amazing.
It was a download. They just needed to sit me still long enough for me to hear them. I think that's when I really started listening.
Oh, I love that.
Because I said, okay, I joke. I'm actually serious, but you know, the universe kicked me in the ass hard enough to get my attention, but not cause serious permanent damage.
Yeah.
Because they're like, she's not listening. She's not listening. She's not listening. Let's put her in the hospital.
And that's the thing. Like, if you don't slow down and listen, it's going to catch up with you eventually.
Yeah.
And what I love that it's like you recognize, and this is like truthfully like where I started with intuition consciously. I would have a thought that was so quick and so fleeting. It was like popcorn, right? Like I remember driving and I remember being like, oh my God, I didn't even get to catch that thought before it was gone.
Right.
And I said to my intuition, because your intuition's just like waiting for feedback. I said, I need you to slow it down. I need you to bring it back because I missed it. And I know that's important. And sure enough, like a couple kilometers down the road, there it is again. Heard it again.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. But it's like, those things are so important. That is your intuition. It will come back around. You can accelerate that by saying, okay, bring it back to me.
Right. Well, and I think I broke my wrist because they said she's listening, but she's still going too fast. Yeah. And they said, we got to slow her down. So, I mean, my wrist is great, but because someone asked me this on a podcast that I was guesting on recently, and they asked me what my learning was, and it just came out. I said, oh, patience. But then what I realized last night when I was asleep, did I say this to you already? Maybe it was in our pre-conversation.
You didn't say this to the listeners, so I'm excited that they get to hear this.
Yeah, that the patience was actually presence. So when you're being patient, it just means that you're actually allowing whatever is now, be now, and be present with it, right?
I love that.
And it's not that I was ignoring things. It's just I think they still thought I was going too fast. Because when you have to write with your non-dominant hand, you really slow down and pay attention. Yeah. Right?
How is your handwriting with your other hand?
It's actually really good.
Nice.
I would hold notes up for you, but they've got papers everywhere. I have a Genius desk. Do you know what a Genius desk is?
What is this?
Only I understand what's going on the desk.
Organized chaos at its
exactly. So how often do you start your 8-week programs?
I kind of offer it if people are interested. I usually will carve out time. I have taught it individually if people want it individually, so they can just contact me and say, "Look, I'm interested. I would love to know this." But my intuition is saying the group one will be offered this fall.
Okay. Is your podcast still going?
Season 2 just started this week. This is, oh yes. So I
Right?
love going deep into the energetics, right? Like really exploring, are you showing up? Are you playing to win? But really breaking down like duality, right? We can be disappointed and still hold our desire. That's where I get into all the nitty gritty and all the deliciousness of that. So the Energy and Intuition podcast, it's on Apple and Spotify and Google and Amazon.
All the places.
All the places.
I just call it all the places.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called again?
The Energy and Intuition podcast.
Energy and Intuition podcast.
Yeah. It is especially good if you are an empath or highly sensitive person, because I talk a lot about navigating the energy.
That's good, because sometimes those, like, you don't know where to go, right? You're just like,
Exactly.
I saw an intuitive one day on YouTube or somewhere who said the highly sensitive person, and I don't totally agree with this. She said the highly sensitive person became that way because something in their environment was violent and they had to be tuned to it. I'm like, that's bull.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just highly intuitive. Why does it have to be something traumatic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't buy into that.
No, that was her.
I think some of us just were acutely, I think we just came acutely sensitive. I think we all are. But some of us just kind of launched into that before developing it.
But it's like somebody has to arrive. This is a random thought that just popped into my head. There's people who have to arrive with it already installed so you can teach it to others.
Yeah.
Like I think about Reiki, nobody knew what Reiki was until I can't remember the gentleman's name, the Japanese guy who said, this is Reiki, and started teaching it and disseminated out. The human design didn't happen until another name, I can't remember, downloaded it from some spirit beings who came and gave it to him, because it's super complicated. Like it's not something you could invent it, because it combines the I Ching and astrology and astronomy and chakras. It's like all of these pieces.
Yeah.
And it takes at least 10 years to figure out how the whole thing works. So it's not something you would have downloaded in 5 days and just busted out of your brain, I don't think.
No. And
but someone has to bring it in to send it out.
I think with things like that, like, I'm an elder millennial, we'll say. So I'm not quite like most people in my generation, but I think some of us come that like generation or half a generation ahead to just pave the way and make it okay for the next generation to be that sensitive. And I think if you look at what people say about, Gen Z and all this stuff.
Well, the indigo children are supposed to be arriving, right? So there had to be some people coming early to help, so they didn't just land here and go, what the hell?
Yeah, that's, what's really funny about that? I've been called that more than once, for sure. And I have not thought about that in years. And now you've just planted that seed again. I'm like, oh,
planted.
Just
give it a little water, a little sunshine. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So so this is what'll happen, friends in the audience. We won't stop. So I'm going to stop us here, because we will just keep going, because we were already talking for like 20 minutes before we even came on.
For the friends in the audience, we've already said that we need to have a chat date after this.
We're going to go on a date. Okay. Yeah. So my favorite thing to do at the end of the podcast is to ask you your intuitive download. What is some final words of wisdom for the audience?
These are the exact words. You know what is inside of you. Let it out.
I think that's perfect. It's probably for me too.
It's also probably for me. The universe doesn't play small, so
it doesn't play small.
It's for everybody.
Right.
And trust the first thing that just came to mind. You got this. That's
it. Beautiful. My friend, I love chatting with you, Janice. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Friends in podcast world, send this out to all of your friends because they'll just have a really good time listening to us, right?
Yeah.
And share, call Janice, listen to her podcast. Trust your intuition.
Yeah.
Right?
Develop it.
And all of the notes are in the podcast to where to find Janice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this.
You.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and for sharing your time and your space, your energies.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Just give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day. And I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.